Yeah, hi people. So in this video, we would be discussing Promise.any function. So Promise.any is a static method that takes an iterable of promises as an input and returns a single promise. This return promise fulfills when any of the input promise fulfills with this first fulfillment value. Basically Promise.any will take a list of promises as an input and it will return a single promise as an output, and that promise would be whichever promise that is gets resolved first, and it will only reject when all the promises passed to it get rejected. That is pretty much Promise.any. If we see this below example, we have first promise which will reject and give 0 as a reason, and then there's a second promise which is using set timeout. So after 100-second delay, it will resolve to give quick, and then there's the third promise which is after 500 milliseconds delay, it will resolve to give slow. Now we have created an array of all these three promises and we are passing this array to our Promise.any function. So the first one is rejected instantly. So it will, since only one is rejected, so it will wait for other promises, other first promise to get resolved. Since the first one was rejected, so it will ignore it, and then it will wait for other two. If any of them resolves, then it will return that. Since this 100 will resolve first, so it will return quick. So this will give us the output as I will try to run this. I will be getting the same quick output. And had it been the case, like if this was resolved instead of reject, then since this was first to resolve, right? Then we would be getting 0 in that case. Yeah. So in the list of promises that have been passed to Promise.any, whichever promise gets resolved first, it will return simply that. And if none of them is resolved, then it will simply reject. Simply is under reject output. Syntax of this is it will be simply using the promise class and any method, and we will be passing a iterable which is in promises array. Yeah, hi people. So be writing unit test for Promise.any method. So let's just start it. Let's just take a copy of any of our old test. I'm taking a copy of all settled, and I'll be using the same test, similar test for writing test for my Promise.any function. I can say Promise.any and it will be of test, and I can remove this copy. Yeah, so this is my Promise.any.test file. Now let's just delete this commented code for now. I can remove my all settled function from here for now, and I can replace the promise my settled with our Promise.any function. So I can say Promise.any. I can replace all these tests. Cool. Just for the testing sake, I can run this for once, and then we will see. Then we will one by one see all the tests and try to. Let's get started. I'm just taking the relative path of this, and I would be running all these tests. If you want to see how did I come up with all these tests, you can watch the first video in the series which is on Promise and all. There we started creating all these tests. Let me just run this test all the tests. Okay, what happened? There was a typo. Okay, so 5 tests passed, 5 tests failed. So we will one by one see each test and we'll try to adapt them to our Promise.any method. Okay, so we can start with the first test, which says resolve. Okay, I can also rename this thing here. Now I'm writing test for Promise.any, resolve all promise, and I can say Promise.any and will give us the first promise, right? Resolve all. I can, instead of all, I can say resolve first promise. Resolve first resolved promise. Like these three, since there's no timer, so the first one will only get resolved. So ideally I should get just first one as output, value one as output. You can format this. Let's just try to run this and see whether number of fill-in tests are reduced or not. No, still it's failing. Let's see what's the problem. Promise.any is not a function. That's weird. Yeah, so I got the problem. The issue was Promise.any is not available in less than Node 15 version. And I was using Node 14, that's why it was not available. Now I have updated my Node version to 18, so Promise.any would be visible and our test should not fail because of that. Let me run the test again. You see now just only 3 tests are failing. That means our first test is passing. Let's see it here. Okay, first problem. Okay, first test still failing. Resolve promise. Okay, yeah, so it will fail because now we don't need any map, right? Since it is just this Promise.any is only returning any one promise, right? One output, right? we'll get this promise once to resolve this. It will just get value 1, and value 1 will come in our result. It's just a single value, it's not a map. So I can simply delete this whole logic. I don't need it. Here I can simply expect a string which is value 1, not an array, since it's just returning a single value. Let's see. Let's now try running the test again and see whether it is passing or not. Okay, so let's first see. Yeah, our first test passed. Cool, that is fine. Now let's jump to second test. Here, the first one is resolved, value 1 fine. Second is rejected, and third is also resolved. Since only one is rejected, but Promise.any says like if any of the promise gets resolved, right? Promise.any just wants to know, right? Whichever promise gets resolved first, just return it. So since value 1 will get resolved first, and this might reject later on, but like value 1 has resolved first, right? So we are not concerned about whichever is promise is rejecting. If any one gets resolved, we are simply returning it. So we will simply return value 1. If that was the case, like all of them are getting rejected, then only it would have returned a rejected response. But in our case, only one is rejecting, and the first one is directly resolved. So we can simply return value 1 here. So again, here I can here also I can change the code to just get the first value 1. I can delete this. I can delete this too, and let me just and I don't need this map state, like because they are no longer returning any status. It's just a single value Promise.any is returning. Just format the document. I'm hoping now this test could also pass. Let's see. Yeah, it seems to get passed. Let's see. Yeah, it got passed. We are good with this start. I can just rename the name to here. We'll return the first resolve promise irrespective of some promises getting rejected. Okay, so this is fine. Now this is all here. We are actually dealing with delayed promise like this. That timeout is there, right? So facing is all delayed promise. Doing this, since this is taking some time, this is taking some time, but this will be instantly resolved, right? So we'll be getting value 3 as output. So I can again change this test, make it equal to the value 3, because this will be the one which will get resolved first. So I can just remove an array here. We are no longer recording any status, so just delete this full expect. Seems fine to me. So yeah, let's run the test again and see what is happening. Cool. All the tests are passing. Yeah, hi people. So actually implementing our Promise.any function. So yeah, let's see. Let's first collapse all these things to a smaller version. Yeah. Now, yeah, I would be implementing my own Promise.any function. So for that, I would try to implement it on the same Promise class. So I can use prototype to have my own version of Promise. Also, I can say my own version of Promise.any. You can say my any function, and then yeah, my any, and then I can use this function syntax to create my own function named my any. Okay, so as you can see, this function is taking Promise.any is taking the list of promises, right? So I can pass promises as input parameter to this function, and then it is returning me a single promise value. So I can simply return a promise via it, and this it's a new promise for me. So I can say return a new promise object for me. And this promise object constructor, this promise constructor has constructor takes a callback function, and I can create an error function in this. I can pass error function to the constructor of this promise, and this error function has two parameters. One is resolve, another one is reject. Cool. Till this much we have our basic design, and now we can actually implement the logic. So what Promise.any does is anytime any promise gets fulfilled, it simply returns it, right? And if none of the promises is fulfilled, which means all are getting rejected, then it simply returns the rejected output, right? So to test those conditions, I can start by containing creating a results. Just a result, like this time my result would be, why I'm doing this, like result will be a single promise now, right? So it's fine. I can just maintain a counter for my reference. I can have a let counter. So counter is initialized to 0. Now I can simply do promise.resolve. Okay, so first I can loop over all the promises I got and one by one see each one of them. So I can say promises.for each. You can remove this array. I can simply say promises.for each. and each object I'm getting is promise. So I can name it as promise, and then I can explicitly convert this promise to promise, because in some cases we have directly passing the value also, right? Like in this test, not this, but I think the third test we are directly passing this. Somewhere we are directly passing the value, either in third or yeah, here we are directly passing the string height. So to convert it to promise, I'm explicitly surrounding it with a promise.resolve. I'm passing promise here. And then now I will be doing then here. So if any of the promise gets resolved, I get a result out of that, then I can simply, if any of the promise gets resolved, then I will be simply done in that result. I can simply say result.result. Let me just format. Okay, my bad. Let me just format this document. Okay, and I can say if the promise is resolved, then it's well and good. If the promises are not getting resolved, then simply send the result. But if it is not resolving, then what can I do is I can simply say catch. And in the catch, I can say an error, and in the error, I can basically simply say increase my counter. And if my counter becomes equal to the length of promise, that means all the promises are ejected, then only my counter will become like all of the promises yielded to catch, like all get ejected. So they all was going inside the catch, and they are incrementing my counter. If all three promises, like in the case of this test, if all three of them failed, then all three of them will come to my catch. They will increment the counter, and when the third one will come, my counter will become 3, right? So if my counter becomes equal to the length of promises being passed, then I can simply say all the promises are ejected. So I can simply return the ejected response. So I can say eject dot, and okay. So one more thing, I have to maintain the list of errors, right? So I can simply say, I can also maintain a list of errors. So I can say let as, so that I can return the errors when all the promises get ejected. So I can simply say error. And here I can simply keep on populating arrays in my this array function. Or yeah, but some array can come first and some array can some later, right? So it's better to use index to do this. I can simply say counter, or I can simply say counter plus plus inside this only, and delete this, and I can have my here. And then when I'm ejecting it, I'm just returning an aggregate array object, right? So new aggregate array, right? And this inside this aggregate array, I can pass two things. I can pass the message here. My message is, I think I got here that message, right? All promises were rejected. This would be my first parameter to this. And my second parameter is the list of errors that I got. I can pass these two things to my rejected aggregate error. And since all the promises are rejected, so it will simply return this aggregate error as a rejected reason to this Promise.any. Fine. The logic seems fine to me. So yeah, let's now just try to run our test with this new Promise.any method. For that, I can simply replace .any wherever .any is coming with my any function, any method that I have created. So I can simply say this. I replaced any everywhere. Let's see one by one. So let's see one by one each test. And I can say, okay, so in the first one, any would be giving me whatever first promise is .resolve, which is value 1, which is correct. In the second one also, yeah, I think the test should pass, right? I'm just replacing it. So let's just run the test and see. I'm just checking whether I got any in all the places. Yeah, here also I have the any, and in this also I have the any, and in this also I have the any, and in this also I have the any, and in the last test also I have any. Fine. Now let's end all the tests and see whether everything is passing or not. Yeah, so I changed. Okay, so I commented this test. Okay, so yeah, I changed my Promise.any prototype into this Promise.any function, and I replaced this Promise.any with my Promise.any function everywhere. And now 5 tests are passing after doing that. If I run the test again, we can see 5 tests are passing. One test I have commented. Let's see, will that be passing with my own implementation of my Promise.any? And in this test, we are just returning all of them as a, let's see what actual thing we get when this test ends. Okay, so this failed. This failed because a message that we are getting is not all promise we are getting as undefined, right? So let's see what we can do. Okay, so that is because in the rejected, we are passing rejectors instead of that aggregate. Let's just try that and see whether this solves that problem or not. I am returning an aggregate object where message is this, there's this. Still, I'm getting this. Okay, that is weird. Okay, so I think first is as and then the second is message. Let's see. Yeah, cool. It passed. So like in the new, I'm return whenever the counter reaches to the length of promises, I'm just simply returning this new aggregate array in which the first parameter is the list of errors that occur, like since all for this test, if I'm talking about this test, all will be giving us the rejected responses. So I would be keep on adding the as in my as array, and once the counter becomes equals to a, I would be creating a new aggregate object, and in that I would be passing the list of as that I have populated so far, and and then the second parameter is the message that I want to return. I can hardcode this message like all promises were rejected, and here in the test I can simply get that message. So yeah, in this way we can implement our promise any method.